Well, good morning. I'm standing here in the forest, the little tiny wood around the vicarage, and I wanted to take a few moments to put up a post that I've been thinking about for a couple of days called Letting God In. You know, during this time of shut-in, this pandemic that is changing the whole world, one of the most important things, I think maybe the most important thing that we can do as people of God, or as artists, or as ministers, is to let God into our lives in a deeper and more real way. Now, for each of us, what I've learned, I haven't mastered this yet, but what I've learned over the course of the last several years, maybe even decades, is that each of us has a different way that is effective to let God into our lives. For some of us, letting God in comes through the space of meditation, prayer, and study. For some of us, letting God in requires us to encourage other people or to coach other people. For some of us, it requires us to serve people or to help people. For some of us, letting God in requires us to gain knowledge and disseminate that knowledge. For some of us, letting God in happens most effectively when we are resourcing people and practicing simplicity and giving. For some of us, letting God in requires us to create leadership teams and to work with teams of people to accomplish goals. For some of us, letting God in requires us to participate in the work of healing other people or the world. We each have a different way of letting God in most effectively. Now, that doesn't mean whatever your way of letting God in negates the other methods of letting God in. So, for instance, we all need to do some prayer and some study of the Word of God. We all need to serve people. We all need to be involved in the act of giving. We all need to be involved in teaching something to someone. We all need to be involved in the act of healing people and the world. But there is usually a way that we find most effective in our lives to let God in. And that way is always going to be the way that we most effectively let God in or allow God to invade our lives. This is a time when we have to allow God to come in. This is a time when the most important thing is letting God in to invade our lives in whatever way is the most effective. Our daily schedules should reflect that. I know that there's a temptation during this time and others to binge on Netflix or to get depressed about what we can't do, to fret over our money situation, or to worry about our families and children. We can lose a lot of time that way, and we can also block God from coming in by worrying, by being afraid, or by using time wasters to fill the space that work used to fill. What we have to do now is we have to practice letting God in, and that requires us intentionally scheduling our lives. I learned about scheduling, probably 15 years ago or so more, from a teacher named Paul Hackett. And when he taught me about scheduling, I wasn't living by a schedule. And I didn't think scheduling was all that important. I thought it was more important to live spontaneously. And I didn't realize how ineffective I was being and how much I was keeping God out of my life and keeping God blocked from invading my life. I began learning how to schedule by putting in the big blocks, the most important things in my life. And at that time, I didn't really know what that meant. I thought it meant scheduling the things or the activities that were most important to me. But at its heart, scheduling is not really about activities that you do. It's about purposes that define who you are. And I have come to believe that each of us needs to schedule our lives according to our divinely created purpose. And that is what I have, over the course of the last 15 years, I have been trying to learn how to do. Like I said, I haven't mastered it yet, but I have learned it and I am practicing it. I wrote a post maybe a month and a half ago now, called "A Professional Meetinger No More." And I talked in that post about how so much of my ministry has been given to the idea that as a pastor, the most important thing I do is have meetings with people. And I've learned over the course of the last years, and especially during this time of shut-in, that my role as a minister, my job as a minister, cannot be defined by the meetings that I have. In fact, meetings are not supposed to be big rocks in my life. Now, that's not to say that meetings with people are not big rocks in some ministers' lives, but they're not in mine. I've learned that as a motivational prophet, and I'm speaking of the Romans 12 gifts here. If you don't know about those, you can message me here and I'll be glad to talk to you about your motivational Romans 12 gifts. But I've learned that I'm a prophet by motivation, and that means that my schedule has to reflect that, which means that much of my time has to be spent in connecting to the spirit world, connecting to God through prayer, through study, through meditation, and through art. I took an artist test with my sister's Bridge artist community that was posted on there, and it was geared to teach us what kind of artists we were. And it showed true to form that I am an artist by nature, which means I like to spend most of my time living between the worlds, is the way the test put it. That I like to live in that space of creativity between this real tangible world and the world of relationships and meetings and all that, and the world of the spirit, God's world. And I like to find inspiration in that place. I've come to it that if I'm going to find my inspiration, if I'm going to follow my muse, if I'm going to connect to God, the big rocks in my schedule have to be the place of prayer and the place of meditation and the place of study. And I can't let other things get in the way of that. I wonder if you know what your motivational Romans 12 gift is and what kind of person you are. And if you know what your big rocks really are. Again, not the activities that that consume most of your life, not work or even family or those things, but what is the big rocks are your motivations. What motivates you? What makes you want to live? And you should schedule that as your big rock. Well, I hope this helps, and I hope to get some comments from you about what your big rocks are for your schedule and what you think your motivation is. Again, if you want to find out more about the motivational gifts, I might do a series on it at some point in the future. I'm doing it right now with my family as a private devotional, but I might do it as a blog devotional at some point. But if you would like to learn more about that, you can get in touch with me right here at Notes from the Vicarage or on my other blog, Lilliput. Great to see you. Have a good day.